Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you find yourself in the world. My name is AF. This is episode 138 of the 343 podcast here on the Sportycast YouTube channel. As I said, I'm AF, joined by Zian, my trusted co-host. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, all good, man. All good.
That's great. That's great. And we have a special guest tonight as well. He's not a new person to the channel. He's been on here before. We've had him in the very early stages of the Sportycast YouTube channel. So he's come back again after a lot of contentious refereeing and VAR decisions. Welcome back to the channel, Keith Hackett.
Delighted to be on your show.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us, and hopefully it's going to be an amazing show. We are just going to start off with a bit of a review of the Premier League weekend. There were a lot of contentious refereeing decisions that I said we will probably get to a bit later. But just from a fan's perspective, Keith, I'm going to get to you first. Did you have a pick of the weekend's games? Any of the teams that you thought maybe stood out? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I thought the Chelsea-Liverpool game was spectacular and generally really well refereed. Anthony Taylor, I think our top referee, instead of producing yellow cards like confetti that he normally does, I think this season he seems to be in a mode of let the players play and I'll come in when appropriate. And as a result, his refereeing is improving. And I think he's certainly always been a fit and mobile guy. I think we're just seeing a bit more maturity from him. But the play was spectacular. I mean, there's no question that this was a terrific match. Took right to the final seconds of the game when Chelsea popped in the winner. I mean, it was just incredible scenes. And of course, what I didn't really like was the manager ran down the touchline, absolutely in joy of his team scoring a goal, which is what football's about. And already on a yellow card, I was really disappointed that Anthony Taylor decided to come across and give a second yellow card. And of course, that followed with the red. Frankly, unnecessary. I know the law, and I know that Taylor will be backed up by the law, but common sense, where is common sense now in our refereeing at the top level?
Yeah, it's part of the game. I mean, it's like you're feeling that euphoric, like that feeling at the end of the game. You want it in with the last kick. You want to go celebrate with your team. It's almost Mourinho-esque. Circa Porto back in 2004, just running all the way down the touchline, celebrating with your team. Like you said, it's the law, and they're going to try to stick to the law as best as they can. We'd like them to stick to the law every single time, but that's not the case. We'll get to that in a bit. Ziad, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you know where I stand. I like all the extra stuff, all the celebrations, a bit of the dark arts and so on. But I think Keith hit the nail on the head with just common sense, man, and logic. Like in that moment, there's nothing to gain from giving that yellow card, and whatever Maresca did, it didn't deserve to be punished in that moment. So you do want to see some more freedom, and like Jason saying in the chat with regards to passion, you want to see passion from the players, from the managers, and so on. It just needs to be handled a bit better, I think, by everyone around, and just let people blow off some steam, understand the moment. I think is key to that.
Yeah. I mean, my view on it is this, that when we say common sense, what the referee could have done is, knowing that he's on a yellow and we're in the final seconds of the game, I think you're walking in the opposite direction. You see what you want to see. Now, if he wants to engage, I really think Where has the word of warning gone? You know, just approach the manager or a player and say, look, I want an improvement in your behaviour. Why put a manager out of the game for what, in effect, I think was a frivolous act? It wasn't worthy of a second yellow. And yeah, all the referees out there will be shouting and screaming at me saying, Keith, it's a yellow card offence. He's come out of the technical area. Yep. We're in the entertainment game at the elite level.
100%. I cannot agree more with that. Moving on from the Chelsea-Liverpool game, Ruben Amorim managed to sort of get a very crucial victory in his journey to basically sustaining that job, that Man United job. Are you of the camp that thinks he will work with this team? Is his system sustainable? Where do you stand in this camp of Amorim works or Amorim doesn't work at Manchester United?
From where I'm sitting, it clearly hasn't worked. You know, when you look at such a massive club, and they've not yet, even though we're years down the line, they haven't got over Sir Alex Ferguson leaving the club. And I think that what we've got, or what appears to be the case from a distance, is a lack of team spirit, a lack of confidence in some of the players, you know, the team changing too often, you know, and not being the dominant days of when I refereed Manchester United with Beckham and, you know, even going back to the days of George Best. So I'm going back some time, and Bobby Charlton. And you know, there was, you know, when you went to Old Trafford, teams struggled to get a result. It was a fortress. And they played with a style, and they played with a terrific defence. And you know, I just look at Harry Maguire. Is he going to be in the team? Is he not? Because I think from a defender's point of view, midfield point of view, the more you play, the better you become. And I think this sitting on a bench and looking at people like Maguire, you suddenly go, either sell him on to another club or use him more frequently. And I think there's confusion around the selection of the team.
Yeah, I think that with Harry Maguire, it's a difficult one. It seems like Ruben Amorim is trying to include him in the matchday squad one way or the other, whether it's him starting the game off and subbing him on the 60, 70-minute mark, or bring him on for the last 20 minutes and basically just playing hoofball, using Maguire as a sort of secondary striker as well. So there's a lot going on over there. There's a lot to unpack over there. Obviously, Harry Maguire is going to want to be playing 90 minutes every single game.
Yeah.
He hasn't been making the England squad as well. Thomas Tuchel is looking at other defenders over him. It's a World Cup year. Like Kobe Manu, he wants to be in that sort of pool for the World Cup selection. So there's a lot of decisions that these players are going to have to make, and it's a weird one because the talent and the potential is there for all of them, and they can all contribute in their own way to Manchester United. It's just that, is the manager open enough to being as inclusive as possible with these groups of players?
Yeah, well, I think that the point that I would raise there is that it's about intelligence, because when you see the top class managers in the Premier League over the years, they're able to adjust their formation, they're able to adjust their style of play to meet the opposition. Now, whether that opposition is, stronger or putting them under threat, you've seen adjustments made. You know, I go back to Bob Paisley and Shankly even. These guys like Ferguson and others are able to adjust the players, make the changes. It seems to me that there's a formation at Manchester United. They're not going to change it. And therefore, as a result, what he's got to understand is every club has about 10 analysts, and they do a SWOT analysis on the clubs and how they're playing, and they know the weaknesses, and they will take advantage of those weaknesses. And sometimes I've seen the head go down. In a very important game a week ago when Fernandes was awarded the penalty kick, and the player wasn't dismissed for the denial. He should have gone. The opposition. What we saw was, the captain missing a penalty kick. And, in doing that, he loses a little bit of authority and respect from his colleagues. So yeah. I don't think Manchester United is anywhere near the club that it should be or has been in the past. It's cyclical often, but I'm just questioning whether Amorim is the right guy for Manchester United.
Yeah, no, just that's something that we will be discussing much more as the season goes on. Ziad, you are a bit quiet over this. So I'm going to bring your team into it. Ziad is an Arsenal supporter. They are top of the league. How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, we ticked a lot of boxes, a lot of results went our way. And at the end of the day, you just have to do well in the games in front of you. So we took care of business against West Ham. I thought it was fairly regulation. It was 2-0. There was a penalty. We didn't light the league on fire, but it was a good result because in last week's episode, we spoke about West Ham being a bit of a bogey team in recent years, coming to the Emirates and getting a result. So it's good to get the 3 points there. And then obviously with the way it played out with Chelsea and Liverpool, things just fell in our favor. Nice to go into the international break as well, just to let it sit a little, enjoy it a bit. And coming back from the break, things are going to be tough. But I think our fixture run is a bit better than it was early on in the season. So feeling optimistic about a good stretch through November going towards Christmas.
Yeah. Jason saying that happy to get a win against a team that has been a banana skin for you guys. Always looking at the silver lining. Keith, what are your thoughts on Arsenal thus far this season?
I think they're at a position where they're a stronger team this season than last. I think they're holding the formation. The defense is strong. I think, you've always got Rice, haven't you, with the ability of popping up and putting the ball in the back of the net. But, when you actually look around the team, you've got some outstanding players. And for me, I think that, I've commented on many occasions in the last 2 or 3 seasons. I really think that they've had some appalling decisions from referees. Not just one, but several. Last season before. And you suddenly go, why? I worried about the Newcastle game, Newcastle Arsenal. When you look at that particular game, going into that game, Jared Gillett, the referee from Australia, who's now resident in England, we've had 6 programs in the Premier League season to date, and he'd had Arsenal. This was his 4th outing with Arsenal in 6 weeks. Now, yes, he wasn't a referee in 6 games, but he was either referee, VAR, or or 4th official. That for me is too great an exposure of a referee to one club, and those are the things that fans are aware of and comment on. So for me, I think Arsenal are going to be a formidable team this season.
Yeah. So you had any comments on Jared Gillett?
Effectively, I felt that I've seen him referee better. I think familiarity breeds contempt. He is generally one of the better referees in the league. In fairness, I don't think he's got all the baggage. I think that I think one of the shortcomings in the Premier League refereeing structure is a lack of leadership and direction and consistency. You know, we see across the 10 games, the 10 programs in a weekend, different referees and an inconsistency of interpretation. And that is straight on Howard Webb. Howard Webb is the boss. He sets, you know, as I used to, you have your referees in a room. You actually look very carefully at every decision that's been made, and then you discuss them. You know, one example, we haven't got there yet, was Sesko's high boot in the Sunderland game. You know, I mean, he nearly kicked the head off his opponent. And I've heard, you know, Dermot Gallagher and others explain that, you know, the referee got this one right. Well, I'm telling you, the referee was 100%. He got it right in awarding a penalty kick. And then VAR came in and they overturned the decision on the basis that they said there was no contact. Now, I just want to tell you this, and that reckless is when a player acts with disregard to the danger to or consequences for an opponent. So if the boot is that high and he's running the risk of kicking the head off his opponent, then that is a foul and that is a penalty kick. And sadly, you know, as an example, that now should be discussed and dealt with. You know, when there was a game involving Manchester United, I think at Bournemouth, a week ago, not this weekend, where you might recall the player was clearly pulled back in the penalty area. Yeah, and in a position about to score. And what we had was chaos, because that was a clear denial of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. That evening, I watched Match of the Day. And for the first time, I listened to the statement made by the Premier League, PGMOL. And it stated that they didn't issue a red card because the player was not in control of the ball. Sorry, guys. You defended that for 3 days after the match, all of you, at the Premier PGMOL. The law is quite specific. It says the likelihood of controlling the ball. Therefore, the likelihood of that forward who's pulled back is he's going to have a shot on goal. That's all he has to do. And that is a very clear red card offence. So it's the big decisions like that that impact on the game. And sorry, that player should have walked. He didn't. And you got PGMOL defending what I see as the indefensible. And that is the problem I see with the PGMOL on a fairly regular basis at the moment. And it's disappointing because I was there. I helped to create the PGMOL. I was the boss for a number of years. Yes, we had difficulties, make no mistake. Refereeing throws up problems and you have to deal with them. But the first thing you do is analyse, look at the laws of the game, and then determine the accuracy. Don't try and pull the wool over the eyes of spectators because they're not daft.
Yeah, and then it's taken them like an entire week, because I think on Monday morning they came out and they admitted basically that they got the Brentford decision incorrect and it should have been a straight red card for they basically
Look, I was responsible, I've said before, to introduce goal line technology. Part of introducing and developing that product with Orkai, and I worked closely with them, was to say that the message to the referee has to be uncomplicated. I don't want a conversation of the what ifs and the might be's. Is it a goal? Is it not a goal? And by the way, if it's not a goal and it hasn't crossed the line, I don't want you to send a message to the referee. Or the message has got to be clear with clarity. As the ball crossed the line, it's a goal. Signal it. And I think that when we have now tracked for 5-6 years of VAR being in the Premier League, I cannot believe that they're making so many errors and then trying to con us. And I'm hard on it because I see the game being influenced by incorrect decisions. And, you know, so when they make a statement like last year, having reviewed the season, that they've only made 18 VAR errors, then I question immediately on what basis do they say they've only made 18 errors? You know, because are we counting the times when VAR doesn't actually come in when they should come in? Because that's not a VAR error. It is an error, but who carries the can? So for me, I think there's still a lot of work to do. I don't like a referee officiating on a Saturday and then VAR on a Sunday, or a referee on a Friday night and VAR on 12:30 kickoff. I just want referees to referee. And I want VARs to be specialists, just like the assistant referees are. So I'm on a high horse, and forgive me. I think if you don't get the basics right, then you're going to continue the catalogue of errors as the season goes on. If you actually say, you know, everybody can drive a car, but they can't drive a Formula One car. And why is Lewis Hamilton and Verstappen good? Because they're trained, they're specialised, and that is all they do. So if you've got a good referee, as I used to have, the Webbs, the Clattenburgs, the Halses, Durkin, they'd referee, and I'd say, that's a good game. You're out next week. Pardon? You're refereeing next week. Thank you very much. I want the same. And then somebody might knock on my door and say, I haven't had a game for a couple of weeks. Well, prove to me that you can referee, like the ones that are doing it at the moment. And this is no different to a manager of a football team. You know, I mean, I jump up and down because I know Mark Halsey well. I know that he can analyse incidents well. I know that he's a very good coach because I've seen him do that. And he's not at the PGMOL. I say, well, if you've got someone that's got world-class skill sets, bring them in. Bring them in. Use them. And they don't.
Yeah, and I think it's missing quite a bit in the Premier League at the moment. And we'll get into the different referees during our next segment. And this next segment will be some of the bigger decisions over this past weekend, and we'll be getting Keith's insight into all of them. Anybody in the chat, if you guys have questions, just forward them, and then we'll get Keith to answer them after the next segment. But we'll start this off with, you mentioned Benjamin Sesko versus Sunderland, and as you can see over there, we have two different angles over here. So we have the side angle and we have the front angle. You can see that his boot is, there is a gap between his boot and his head. But like you said, it's the height that the boot goes to. And what Dermot Gallagher said, it's the right decision in the end that the referee didn't give the penalty, but then the linesman or the assistant referee, he flagged it for a penalty. And then VAR eventually sent him to the screen, and then the referee ruled it out once again. Dermot says VAR was there and VAR was used correctly. So we'd like to get your detailed analysis on this one.
I gave Dermot that job I put him in that position when he'd retired as a referee. I know where his salary comes from. I mean, I listened to the explanation. I listened to the player's explanation. Are we saying then that we only penalise when the head comes off the shoulders? Is that challenge by that player reckless? And reckless is when a player acts with disregard to the danger or consequences for an opponent. And in that situation, he's committed a yellow card offence. To actually go out in public as a former referee and state that that is not an offence because there's no contact. There doesn't have to be contact. Right, let me give you an analogy. If you're driving a car and you're heading for a crash and the other driver reacts and the two cars don't come together, you can still be charged for reckless driving. So for me, I'll cut it short. This is a yellow card offence for which the player should have received a yellow card and a penalty kick. Clear. And Dermot Gallagher is 100% incorrect because you do not have to make contact to be reckless.
Yeah. We have a question in the chat. Why do they always give the refs a still image to start? Surely that guides the initial thoughts.
Yeah, I you know, I think that the referee should be the one that controls the clips. And now I know that's difficult technically, but they have to see the video at normal speed. Then let's slow it down. And then if need be, show the still. So for me, it's the wrong way around. I think that you need to see it at normal speed. And then you can actually determine more accurately what has happened, the movement of all the players around. And then, of course, when we look at this, I'd question whether, in fact, contact was not made. The contact may be made. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that for me, in the laws of the game, is a reckless challenge.
I agree.
Let's just look at what we say here. I listened in to what the VAR was saying. And I tell you who was refereeing that incident. He hardly gave the referee any chance to look independently at it. He was at him. I've brought you across. And when you consider that in 5 years or 6 years of VAR being in operation at Premier League level, I think someone reminded me at the weekend, only one of the incidents when the referee's gone to the screen, the referee has said to VAR, I'm not accepting your decision. I'm going with what I've given and I'm staying with what I've given. So, you know, by the time he's walked the walk to the screen, he's listened to the talk and he's gone, the easy decision, just follow the VAR.
And sometimes these decisions take up like 4 or 5 minutes. It's a lot of wasted time. We have another question in the chat. Could the opponent take advantage of such a rule by putting his head as close to the boot as possible to win the penalty without any intention of getting the ball?
It's a good point because, yes, there's no question that if the player ducks down to, down near waist high to head a ball, then he in a way he's endangered his own safety, and as a result, yes, you can penalise him. So it's rarely done, but the laws will cover you for that. The reality here is, I've used the analogy of a car, and I think that really explains the fact that you can be charged for dangerous driving without crashing your car.
Yeah.
And therefore, what I see from a distance is that I think the country that's using VAR the best is the MLS. I know the guy that's in charge at the MLS, Greg Barkey. He's been in position a number of years. He has specialists. What they need at the PGMOL is specialists. Just like we have an assistant referee, they're trained to do the job. They're less technical now, but they're still trained. They're specialists. That's their role. That's what we want with VAR. We want that guy to be the VAR. And if he's incompetent and he makes errors, then he sits on his hands. I'm quite clear that in football, if the number 9 stops putting the ball in the back of the net, he runs the risk of not being selected for the team that week. And I see nothing wrong with, look, when a referee is human, and they have form. If they can have a run of form that's excellent, then it drops off. When I talk about accountability, I'm not giving that referee an appointment, not necessarily as a punishment. I'm actually saying I have a duty of care to that individual as an employee, as an employer, to actually then offer that referee appropriate operational advice. You've made this error. How can we avoid making this error in the future? Then you take this clip and you discuss it with all the referees, and you say, right, as a group of 20-odd referees, I want the referee to talk through this incident, the VAR to be involved in that conversation. Then I want the group of referees to discuss it. And what you do is, by the time you leave the room, you've agreed either you're going to penalise that and follow law, or you're going to stick with that decision. Now, for me, I think, there are areas of the game that are very specific. This is a subjective decision, but you take the subjectivity out by coaching your referees in terms of what you want as the boss.
Yeah. I like that. So let's move on to the next decision, and that's in the same game, Manchester United versus Sunderland. And we had Bertrand Traore basically running through on goal. Senel Lemons, he came out to try and block his run. Bruno Fernandes coming across, and essentially Bertrand Traore thought that he got sandwiched between the two players. He went down looking for something. The referee then booked him for simulation. Dermot Gallagher says sometimes the third option is to do nothing. Is it a penalty? No. Is it a doxo? No. Is it a dive? I don't think so, because I don't see what else the player can do in that situation. So if the game goes on, no one would moan, everyone would accept it. So do you agree with Dermot over there that Traore should not have been booked for simulation?
100%. Absolutely spot on. I listened to it and I thought, Dermot, you've explained that as well as it could ever be explained. This is the difficulty that we have in the game, because the referee's got one view, and I've already said that the referee was in a pretty good position to judge this, but he's got one viewing angle, and he hasn't got the view that's given or available that we see from different television camera angles. And I think one of the difficulties is that what I would like to see is this. When you have an act of simulation on the field of play, that for me should be put on report. In the world of rugby, when the referee is unsure, he puts it on report. So I would like an independent panel made up of a referee, a former manager, a former player, to judge acts of simulation which is a cancer in the game. And yes, it's re-refereeing, and I know FIFA don't like the re-refereeing scenario, but where you have the on-field referee in this case saying that's a yellow card, this player has no right of appeal against that yellow card. And that, for me, is wrong. I would like the ability of an appeal system against a yellow card, but I'd also like to see a policing of acts of simulation to try and stop it. Because let me tell you, years and years of refereeing, sometimes I need more than one look, 3 looks, to actually determine an act of simulation, because the players are that good at it. It's not an easy call for the referee. And what he's done is he's got involved. And Dermot's absolutely right. When you are not 100% certain, keep the whistle in the hand and nowhere near your mouth. Well done, Dermot. I clapped him before. On this one, he's right.
Ziad, you said that the yellow card was a bit harsh. I don't know if you saw, but Jay Bertrand over on Sky Sports, he also said that it's a bit harsh. What else is Traore supposed to be doing in that situation? If he doesn't do anything, you basically get squashed. So from your point of view, surely that shouldn't have been
yeah, I mean, I genuinely thought this was a foul. There was no need, in my opinion, in this situation for that player to go to ground. So when I first saw it, I've gone foul. Outside the area, I was certain that this was not an act of simulation. This was not a dive. This was a player moving at speed. I thought there was some contact in that movement, and he went to ground. One of the difficulties that we face as referees is the exaggerated fall. We're going to talk about Garnacho shortly. You know, he's in my mind a sealed offender, and what he needs to, or his manager needs to do, is to say there are times when he is fouled, but he's not going to get it because the referee thinks he's diving. So it works the other way.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to go to our next one. And you brought up the Garnacho incident against Liverpool. You can see that there is a hand on the back of Garnacho from Dominic Szoboszlai. This is the one angle. This is the other angle. Obviously, Garnacho is running at a pace as well. So any sort of touch on his body is obviously going to throw him off. Ziad, I think you have something to contribute there quickly.
Yeah, look, with this one, right? It's just like, for me, the guys go down to easy, man. I was very frustrated when Gabriel did it with Arsenal Newcastle, when he felt the hand on his back and he collapsed theatrically. Like, you were central defender, stand your ground. If that small touch is enough to put you down, it's not a foul, right? Because you going down. And it's the same in this case, where I feel strongly that a lot of these guys, when they feel contact, or they try and put the ball in a position where they can get a foul as opposed to trying to score. So I mean, with this one, for example, obviously he just felt contact and he went to the ground hoping that the rule of, if there's contact, then you'll get a foul for it. But like Keith said, if you go down that easily, you sometimes don't get the decisions in your favor, because you start earning that reputation. So almost Zaha, like, right, Wilfred Zaha also had that reputation for going down and trying to get those fouls. But it's frustrating, because at the end of the day, if you can't stay up, try and score, you'll still possibly get the foul. But yeah, this one was, I don't know what he was looking for there, to be honest.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, you've explained it absolutely spot on. There's no question that what we're seeing in the game, and this is why I talked about a review panel. you see players very cleverly in front of goal with an opportunity to score. They put the brakes on, manufacturing contact, wanting a penalty kick when they've had an opportunity to put the ball in the back of the net, and it's beyond me. And it's cheating, but it's daft. And one of the things that creates that is that they know as players that often they're fouled and they stay on the feet and they don't get the penalty kick because they're on the feet. So I understand the nuances that managers are probably saying to their players, if you feel that touch, go down. But what you've seen in recent years is how clever players are at clicking their own heels. And the referee is not only seeing, but he's hearing that contact. And sometimes that referee, sadly, he buys it because he's human and he thinks that's a penalty kick. This one, the referee was in a great position. He was looking for it, and he rightly didn't get it. And I agree with you 100%.
And that's also the thing, like in terms of the position. So in this case, the referee was in a great position, so he didn't need too much input from VAR. But I think where VAR has its value is when the referee is not in a good position. But then it's just the process, which we have discussed a bit already. But the process of getting to the right decision then, especially when the referee didn't have a good angle or a good look. But in that moment, I still trust the referee's judgment, if he's got into a decent position to make the call, and then it has to be something that he got like completely wrong for it to be overturned. But these marginal ones is where it gets a bit frustrating as a fan, because you could see it both ways, and then you've got the assistant or the VAR telling them, go look at the monitor, and it's almost like they're encouraging you to change your decision or that you got it wrong. Because if the ref saw something and that's his decision, then don't try and encourage him to change it unless there's something really egregious or something that we really need to look at. But I saw Asfar asked about the Isak situation. AFC, is that
we're
next?
getting to that one. Yeah, we're getting to that one.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely spot on, because I think that the criteria that is laid down very clearly is clear and obvious. And when you coach referees and you coach VARs, through the experience now of 5 or 6 years, they really ought to have a compendium up in there, the brain, recognizing what is a clear and obvious error. And there are times when the VAR comes in and then we have a manufactured decision. The referee, if you like, what has happened with one or two referees, incidentally, is this. They get near the penalty area and there's hesitation in the decision. When there's hesitation in a penalty kick decision, any big decision, right, the chances are you're going to get it wrong. Because a penalty kick decision, you've got to be in the right place. You go with your head, you go with your heart. The process of refereeing is quite simple. You see, you recognize, you think, and then you act. And we've got some referees who are in a good position. They see, but there's almost an hesitancy, a reluctance, and they're waiting for the VAR to come in and say whatever. And I think sometimes what happens is they think, oh, I'll give a penalty kick and then it'll be reviewed. And then we'll come out with the right decision. And you get the VAR thinking, oh, he's given a penalty. I'll have a look at this video and I'll have another look and I'll have another look. And I'm unsure. I'll bring the referee across. And the referee comes across and he goes, well, the VAR's brought me across. What are you going to show me? Yep. Oh, it's a penalty. Because the balloon's in the air. And it becomes manufactured. And what you've got to do is you've really got to try and get the subjectivity out of these decisions, the grey area, and say, this is what is expected in this situation. And for me, I think VAR, the bar for VAR is too low. Because it's almost like they sit there for 30 minutes and they suddenly think, I've not been involved here. I'll invent. Oh, yeah, I'll have another look at that. And so it's not giving us, I think, as a sport, what we require. So I do think the powers that be who are a bit distant from the English game, because ultimately at the end of the day, look, if you're the boss of the PGMOL and you're just under pressure from the media and all that goes with it, what you've got to do is you've got to say, how can I improve it? How can I get an improvement? And for me, I think it's quite simple. I think that with all the video clips you've got, you can actually lay down lines that say, in this situation, you don't come in. And, you know, I think fans have a better idea of what is a clear and obvious error than referees. That's the daft situation, you know. And I think almost they invent the process at the moment. It creates doubt in the minds of fans because they're not engaged. They're sat in a stadium and they're wondering what's going off. And 2 offside decisions last year took 6 minutes, even though they got the semi-automated offside system in place. And at the end of the day, one of the outcomes was incorrect anyway. And I'm saying, just a minute, the assistant referees that I had on the line, Glenn Turner, Darren Cann, Mike Malarkey, Philip Sharp, and others, they would have made that call without VAR involvement anyway. We got the decision. The delay in decision that we see and we feel when we're inside the stadium, what does delay mean? Doubt. Doubt on the outcome. Whatever the outcome is, right or wrong, we're doubtful. And of course, there's then in the fans' eyes a loss of confidence. And I think that's the impact of VAR is not giving the game the outcomes that it should. And you know, 380 games, the VAR admitting to 18 last season. And we're talking about critical decisions here. You know, how many times do you crash the car if you're a Formula One driver? That you keep your seat in the car. Lewis Hamilton doesn't crash it every other week, does he? We're doing that. And I think that, you know, I could go on at length, but I do think that it's not delivering the quality of decisions that we would expect.
Yeah. I agree. I think that the lack of accountability needs to be a bit of a spotlight on that. Like, referees need to be able to be held accountable for the decisions. But I just want to move on to the next one. And this one is more or less straightforward. It was in the Arsenal versus West Ham game over the weekend. Al Haj Juf brought down Urim Timber. He brought him outside the box. Dermot Gallagher said it started outside but continued inside. VAR checked it. They confirmed it was still a foul in the box, so that's why it was given. An upper body foul is much easier to detect.
First of all, I agree. This was a foul just outside, then on the line. If you look at that situation there, the still, you'll see that the foot of the player is actually on the line. The line is part of the penalty area. So for me, I think this was an expectation that you wouldn't necessarily need VAR to come in. This should be the assistant referee in a good position, you know, in line with the outside of the penalty area line, And yeah, good decision, good outcome.
Yeah.
Correct decision.
Cool. And then, yeah, this one was pretty much straightforward. So we'll just move on to the next one. And this came in Burnley versus Aston Villa. Zian Flemming, what he was doing, he was trying to protect the ball essentially. And then he elbowed Emi Buendia in the face. It was obviously accidental. Dermot Gallagher says it is not a red card. He steps across to protect the ball and his arm is up there. He does not throw it out like a weapon. It is a player trying to protect the ball, nothing more. So that's the one angle. And then this is the other angle, essentially.
Right. So what you see when you look at the slow-mo on this particular decision is the movement of the defender, body and elbow towards his opponent. Right? So what you've got is you've got that leaning action and the elbow. You know, when you play football, you don't necessarily need your elbow higher than your shoulder unless you're going to jump for the ball. For me, I think that the player is very lucky not to receive a red card. The elbow is a weapon. And I want to tell you this, that what happened here was that the player started with a bent elbow and straightened it. And that is, again, another indication that, yes, yeah, for sure, he's actually holding off the player or attempting to block. I agree. But in doing so, he's made contact with the player around the head. So that, for me, is an offence. I'm not suggesting a red card, but I'm actually saying he's been reckless with the position of his arm. I think that Dermot's looked at this on many occasions. I can tell you, as a referee that was always reluctant to give red cards or yellow cards, he was a referee that got on with the game. In fairness to him, I don't necessarily agree with him on this particular one.
Ziad, any thoughts from you?
I think just with No, I think it makes sense with that reckless thing. Look, when things are not intentional, always try to give the benefit of the doubt. So I can understand where that decision came from, but it is reckless. So I can see it both ways. But at that late in the game, also doesn't have too much of an effect on the game, I think. But at the end of the day, we just want that consistency, man, with all the decisions. So if the same process is always followed, then we can accept the outcome as fans. And I think that's the key for me.
And, I think, the point is this, that, there's a degree of subjectivity in it. I'm one that worked hard when I was boss to get yellow card average down from 4.5 to 5 per game down to 3, because and the outcomes improved, because what I wanted was a step management. In this situation, if the referee is in doubt with regard to the legality of the elbow, because they've accepted that it's not a weapon, and it's not reckless, and it's not endangering the safety of an opponent, then I think the referee might just intervene without stopping the game and saying, look, watch your arm, watch your elbows, be careful. Because he was in the area of being penalised. But for me, I have a duty of care towards the players. I'm the lawmaker. I'm the guy that applies the law, and I want players to move off that pitch with a degree of safety. I think the player was clearly hit with the elbow in the face, and whilst there might have been an overreaction, who knows? He suffers the pain. I don't. But for me, I think the player was reckless. He was lucky he got away with it.
So this is our second last one. This was in the Crystal Palace versus Everton game. Chrysanthus Uche, he walked past James Tarkowski, and in the midst of that, he just gave him a bit of a punch in the stomach. The referee didn't pick it up. It was actually VAR who picked it up and alerted the referee to it. But then at the end of it all, VAR was the one who said that they deemed it wasn't violent. So why would you then need to stop the game if, like, you had the chance to review it on your own, but you asked the referee to stop the game, and then you yourself end up coming to the conclusion that it's not violent enough for any further action?
In law 12, striking or attempting to strike is a red card offence. This player punched his opponent. I was gobsmacked that this didn't result in this player getting a red card. Are we going to allow players to punch? Now, there's a vulnerable zone when the goalkeeper comes out, because we've had one or two incidents in recent years where the goalkeeper comes out with one arm stretched out and misses the ball and hits the opponent. And on one or two occasions, I think that's a red card. He's gone with the clear intentions of doing his opponent. This player punched his opponent. And the sadness is, if we didn't have VAR, what would happen is that would go to the disciplinary panel of the FA. The FA would contact the referee and the assistant referees and ask a question. Did you see this incident? No. Then the outcome would be that would be reviewed by the disciplinary panel. But because they've said they've seen it, at what stage in refereeing and in football do we allow an opponent to punch a player, to punch an opponent and not receive a sanction? I was gobsmacked when I saw it.
Ziad, I don't know, did you catch this live over the weekend?
No, not live. I didn't see this part, but yeah, it's fairly simple, I guess, with the law, right? If you make an attempt to do it, then that's enough. But like you said, AF, why did they stop the game and then deem it not not violent conduct? Surely there was enough to ring an alarm bell, so there should have been some sort of action with regards to that.
Yeah, I think the outcome has to be that the referee and the VAR in this situation receive some operational advice from Howard Webb. And if I was in the seat, I'd probably be sending the clip to the manager of the team saying, if this player or any of his players or any player in future games takes this course of action and we have seen it, we will red card that player.
I like that.
Because the problem here is a precedent's being set. I do it next week and I get sent off. I'm going to be screaming. I'm going to be saying, but last week the player wasn't sent off. Yeah. This gets to the nuts, the crux of refereeing, and that is you want consistency. If you see it and VAR's come in on it, then the referee's gone to the screen, or he should go to the screen, and he should be the guy that makes the decision. Is this one of fear about sending a player off? I judged it once. Yeah. And I'm not, I'm no longer referee, but I've gone, he's punched him.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on this one. We have one more incident that we want to cover, and that was Alexander Isak and Reece James in the Chelsea versus Liverpool game. This is the first still that we have, and then this is the second one where Alexander Isak goes down. Dermot Gallagher says that it's a foul by Isak. He grabs Reece James first. The first foul is committed by Isak. The referee spots the foul. Everybody sees the game through the prism of their own club colours, understand Arne Slot's frustration, but quite clearly Isak commits the first foul.
You know, what you do in this situation is you're blown for the free kick and you actually talk to both players. And you know, you stop the game and you simply have a word to both of them that says, I saw what went off. I want an improvement in your behaviour. Full stop. Now, whichever half it's in, this isn't about teams. This is about saying, I've stopped the game. It's a 50-50. I'm giving it to the defending team. And apply a bit of common sense. Or you ignore it completely. And then what you do is you run alongside each player whilst the game is going on and saying, look, I saw that clash. I'm unhappy with it. I was uncertain as to who started it first, but don't let it happen again, because I will get involved. And this is about communication. This is about, you know, not every decision is black and white. Not every decision, you know, things happen on the field of play. You don't get the best view. I've gone through the process, see, recognize, think and act. And sometimes the skill of the players bemuse the referee. And in that situation, I go with Gallagher. If there's an unsure about it, play on. But I think here it was easy to blow for a free kick. And then when Slot comes into my dressing room after the match and wants an explanation, I'll say, well, I'm the referee. I've got to make a decision. I could have gone either way. I went with the defending team because I prefer that than a risky goal being scored from an incorrect decision or a doubtful decision. You know, I just think there are better ways of managing conflict on the field of play. Football is a contact sport, and incidents like this you judge and you make the call. But I think invariably, we're very forensic, because what we have to say is this: what are the players' behaviour like? What is the game flow like? And one of the things that we saw with Anthony Taylor in that Chelsea-Liverpool game was players wanting to get on with the game. And as a consequence, when he could, he applied advantages when fouls had taken place. And in fairness, players responded very positively to that style of refereeing. That's how I used to referee way back, because we had players who just wanted to get on with the game. Now we've got players and teams tactically who want to find any reason to stop the game. And that's why the average playing time now is 54 minutes of actual playing time. And for me, you know, quite a lot of wasted time with the referee.
Ziad, anything from you on this subject?
Yeah, I think it's again like a lot of the other ones, right? It's just common sense, and there's a lot of these fouls that happen where it's actually a lot of nothing. It's 50-50, and the benefit of the doubt, you know, should go to the defending team, like Keith said. And it's also like when this type of foul happens outside the box, it gets officiated differently to when it happens inside the box. And that's maybe also something to look at, where you just want the game to flow, and these small there's naturally contact that's going to happen. Just let the game flow, unless it's something where, you know, there's malice involved or it's a reckless challenge. But if two people run into each other and it's not, you know, to take the guy down, and they're both trying to play the ball, the game should just flow on. So that's how I see it, and as a fan, that's what I want to see more of. Like I've always told you guys a lot in the group chat and so on, when there's injuries, just play on. Most of the times the player will get up because he's not actually hurt, right? And that's a big thing for me.
You know what we see in the game, the modern game, is the fact that you may have a team that's at the top. So if you take your beloved Arsenal and their teams towards the bottom of the league, what they do tactically is they absorb time within the law, and they also waste time outside the law, because what they want to do is they want to restrict the amount of playing time, reducing the opportunity of your club scoring a goal. I'm giving that as an example, but that is pretty typical. And I'm with you 100% on the injuries. You know, I know when somebody's dying or at risk of dying. I had a game at Norwich Ipswich many years ago when I plunged my fingers into the mouth of Mitch Diaveri of Ipswich because his tongue was blocking his airways and he was turning blue. For me, I would like football to adopt rugby, the rugby league operation, where the trainer comes on, and interestingly, rarely do we see, I've never seen a set of rugby players run into a guy who's treating an opponent or treating a colleague. So for me, bring the guy on and, treat the player on the field of play and let the game continue.
Yeah, because that just it opens up such a long passage, because the game stops for treatment. The player gets a treatment on the field. Then that same player has to leave the field. And when the game restarts here, you can't come on immediately. So what are we waiting for then, right? If we can't participate, then we just play on until, obviously, if the ball goes out, it's a different story. Or if the injury is more severe than anticipated, then head injuries obviously have a different protocol. But yeah, I think it's just, I also think with the fouls, if the referees don't stop the game when they see a guy lying on the ground, if they felt it wasn't a foul, then those fouls will also become less, or you'd hope so, over time, because players realize they're not going to get rewarded for it.
Correct.
It's because they know the longer they lie there, there'll either be a break in play, or the referee will feel, maybe there's an injury, let me stop the play. And they tend to get away with it and they play on. My thing is, if a guy's going to be down that long, then sub him. He must go off. Exactly. Why are we allowing him to play on if he's lying there and rolling around for 5 minutes, and then he gets up and he takes the free kick that he won himself? I always find that strange.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah,
I agree. There's a better way of doing it.
Keith, we have some questions in the chat for you before we wrap up. So Ramiz asked, does the player's height or build ever influence decisions? A tall player lifts his foot normal height, but it's too high for the small player. Or a tall player shields the ball and his shoulders or elbow is the height of the short player's head and hits them.
I think that it's a really good question. That what you do is you take into account what you see in front of you and you make a judgment, no matter what the height of the player is, and you effectively make that judgment as to whether, the position of the elbow, for example, in the face of an opponent, smaller guy, it'll land in the chest of an opponent, equally as painful, less dangerous, probably. And the tall guy, I think that what we see is that the scenario is this: players have a duty of care towards their opponents. And so if you're a tall guy and you've got an opposing small player in front of you, you're still going to have to take care where you plant your foot, or where you play the ball. So I think it's a judgment call. It's a very good question. I had the pleasure of refereeing Maradona. Maradona was relatively small, but he was equally as strong as any other player on the pitch. So he played to his strengths, you can go around the grounds. Kenny Dalglish wasn't a tallish guy, but he too had that ability, And I think when you look around the teams over the years, quite often that smaller player has got the skill sets and the speed to beat the tall opposition. And so I think there are all ways of doing it. A small player can still block a tall player in terms of blocking offence. So I think, yeah, you take that into account. You decide on what is in front of you.
I like that answer. We have another question in the chat. Many fans feel VAR has disrupted football's rhythm and moved controversy to the monitor. In your own opinion, has it truly made the game fairer or just created new problems?
I'm a great believer in technology. So I come from that point. I still believe there's a lot of work to be done in terms of the execution of technology. At this moment in time, I'm not sitting on the fence. It is not delivering. It's impacting on the game in a negative manner. It's put certain referees in doubt in terms of the decision-making process. And I think that we're overindulging VAR in this country. And I would like to see one of two things. Maybe the introduction of saying the manager has 2 calls. I want a review on
like
that.
They do in cricket. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I want, and I love to see, is the big screen and the referee interrogating what he's been asked to see on a big screen in the stadium. We can listen in to the conversation between the VAR and the referee. Transparency is what I delivered when I was a referee. Transparency is what I delivered when I was boss of the PGMOL. At this moment in time, there isn't transparency. There's an effort, isn't there? There's an effort with mic'd up through Howard Webb, but it's all a bit like, I'll pick the ones that are easy, not the difficult ones. You know?
So like we have all of these like new sort of technologies that's being introduced as RefCam and all of these other things. We don't really want to be seeing the ref's view on like goals or passes or stuff like that. Give us the interactions, give us the sort of conversations that, like you mentioned, between the referee and the VAR, so we can hear what's actually happening. We don't want to get them 3 or 4 days later through Sky Sports, hearing what the conversations was. We want to hear it in real time. So instead of giving us RefCam, give us those real live interactions and communications.
Yeah, I mean, rugby do this really well, and cricket does. And I can, so therefore, with the technology and with what the money that goes into the Premier League, I think there's a better way of achieving the end result. I mean, if we look at the technology that I introduced, if I introduced communication kits, and the first problems we had in the first week was the chatter. Everybody wanting to talk, confusing the referee. Then the second problem was that Chelsea, when the referee was in the middle of the park, he was occasionally getting a taxi call to go from Kensington High Street to Oxford Circus. So we had to develop it further, encrypt it, and it delivered. And I think for example, with the semi-automated system that is coming on offsides using AI technology, Europe has got the better result than the English Premier League. Why? The European version uses Okai, and it uses the Adidas ball, and the Adidas ball has a chip inside it. The English system does not have a chip in the ball. It tracks the ball. The law on offside, for which the semi-automated system has been brought in, the law states touch or play. So immediately you touch the ball, the player in an offside, if you can think of a camera shutter, that should be the point at which the photograph is taken of the position of the players. But that system is not available in the semi-automated system used in the Premier League. It uses a tracking mechanism. It doesn't have that touch. It doesn't have the chip in the ball. Therefore, when you know that a player can travel 7 meters per second, equate that to an accurate decision and an offside toenail decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So
small
I
things
think
like that.
it's the development of technology,
Yeah,
but it's the development of people who use it. You know, you and I know that an aeroplane is a very efficient tool. It's got engines, it's got loads of technology around it. You and I couldn't fly it because we've not been trained.
Yep.
Pilots are trained. Simple as that with technology.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of it all, like I feel like if you compare the Premier League to sort of the Champions League and like all of these other leagues that have VAR incorporated into it, I think the Premier League has the most mistakes on a seasonal basis compared to all the other leagues. So there's a very long way to go for the Premier League, for Howard Webb and all of these guys. And I mean, the budget is there to get them all on the same page, to get them to be as consistent as possible. So I feel like maybe you need to start putting a word in over there with all of your mates.
Well, I think some would listen. Howard Webb would not. I think the simple fact are there's plenty of people around, but I think that if you want an organisation to be the world-class referees that it once was, that's down to leadership, direction. That's working with a coaching squad that's elite. At the moment, I fear that I delivered that at 5 million a year. They're now spending 40 million. I know that's a small beer in terms of Premier League money, but the reality is I don't think we've got good coaches. And at the moment, I think Howard Webb's got to give greater leadership and direction. I think there's too many administrators. You know, if we look at the successful managers in the English Premier League and Football League, they're the ones that are the guys in charge. We know Arsenal have Arteta. We know he's a good manager. He's a good manager because he's surrounded himself, like Arsene Wenger, with capable, competent people. And what he then does, he gets capable and competent players. Now they've opened the purse strings to play for Arsenal. It's as simple as that. You know, Shankly, Bob Paisley, Alex Ferguson, we knew that they run the club. We don't necessarily see that dynamic of Howard Webb and the Premier League referees. We don't see that, in my opinion. He's got some work to do.
Yeah, I think that's a very great point to leave off on so that we can wrap up. Thank you so much for that, Keith. Zian, you must be smiling for that last comment. Must have made your night right there.
Yeah, I see. So got some love in the chat also from Jason.
Great. Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much, Keith, for tonight. If the people want to have a chat with you online, where can they find you on social media?
They can find me on my email, khackett3@sky.com.
Nice
or
one.
On social media, Hackett @HackettRef in capitals.
Yeah, if you want to see live VAR and officiating reactions on Twitter, Keith Hackett never fails to disappoint. It's always good to just chill on his timeline and get all of these referee reactions in live real time. So yeah, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence once again. Ziad, where can the people find you on social media?
Yeah, all the usual spots, but just a quick one for MLB. So baseball postseason is on at the moment, so a lot of content will come from that on the Sportycast channels. I'll be pushing a lot of that for the next couple of weeks.
Nice one. And yeah, just on that, follow us at Sportycast on all social media platforms. That is Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok. I can't remember what else I left out now, but yeah, any social media platform, we have the same handle. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe. If you haven't liked this video yet, give it a like right now. Tell your mates, tell your family about Sportycast. We are trying to grow as much as possible, and with your help, with your support, we are finally getting to where we need to be. I am at AFParker6421 on all social media platforms. Thank you so much to everybody who showed up in the chat tonight, asking Keith all of these questions. We appreciate it. And yeah, I'm AF4343, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.